Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Um, Welcome to the Masterclass series. Today, SQL Databases in Microsoft Fabric. Some quick reminders. This is a public forum. Many good friends on this call today. I saw a lot of names I recognize, so thank you for hopping on. But many of you are from different GSIs, different companies, so we do not want to have you share information that is confidential and unique to you and to your business. So happy to take general questions on the product, general questions on approach, etc. But if you have something that's unique to your business and unique to your company, let's take that offline. Let's have separate individual discussions. Each of your companies has a dedicated
No biting.
global
Hey,
partner.
no biting.
Hey, folks, if I could ask you to go on mute, please. So just to finish off, each of your companies has a dedicated global partner manager and a global data and AI manager as well. So any questions, any follow-ons, please reach out to them. Tell them that you had an awesome session with Buck Woody in the Azure GSI Masterclass series, and you would like to do a follow-up. And then your alliance manager, your data and AI manager will follow up on that. And we'll get you the appropriate discussion afterwards. So, Buck, to close off, this is our GSI community. Everyone that's here is under NDA. They're good friends. They drive a ton of business with us. They make our customers very, very happy and very, very successful. So I'll go on mute. I'll hand it over to you, Buck. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it. And it's over to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone else. As I mentioned, if you have a question, I'm going to put that chat window up on my screen so I can see that. I'm going to move y'all over here to this screen. That way I can pay attention to the camera and to my session, and also that. Hopefully you're seeing a screen that says SQL Database and Fabric Feature Partners for you. My name is Buck Woody. I work at Microsoft. I'm a data scientist, and I'm on the CAT team, the Customer Advisory team. So what we're going to do in this session today, I'll do a very short session where we'll go over everything. You're going to see a demo and so on. You're welcome to take the material that I'm about to give you. This is public, so you're welcome to give that to your clients, and Prashant or James or anyone else can get you the deck that you're looking at, and then you'll get some information about how things sort of work. So our agenda today is we're just going to introduce this. We're going to give you some customer pitches, how you talk to your customers about it. We'll do some demos along the way, and I'll do those live. I'm not going to record that one. And then what we're going to do is turn it over to Prashant for questions that you might have, and he's also going to go over some of the use cases. Now, I'll stay on for questions as well when he's doing that. So let me get my chat window up. Oh, it says chat is not available. Okay, well, so we'll just we'll get questions live at the very end. Then is the way we'll do it. I'm going to zip past that slide. And what I want to do is jump right in for you. And what I always find is helpful with a customer when I'm talking to them is to take them from something they already understand and then show them something they don't understand. So most of you have worked with Microsoft Fabric quite a bit. And in the Microsoft Fabric stack, it's different pieces. We've got Power BI, and we've got data warehouse, and we've got data factory, and so on. So a lot of the folks that we've worked with understand different pieces. We're trying to get that into a more unified platform. And where we were talking to people about Microsoft Fabric being an analytics platform, we now have the idea of a unified data platform. I think we have somebody coming off mute there, Hina. Okay, there we go. Good. So we're talking about the data platform at this point rather than just analytics. And so you can see the pillars we have are a little more simple to understand. First, we have data factory because, of course, we've got to move data around. And then we've taken all of the synapse this and synapse that and all the different messages we had there, data warehousing and lake houses and all these sorts of things. And we've moved that to the word analytics to make it a little simpler for your customers. Jumping over, we also have a section here called real-time intelligence. So things that come in that are constantly coming in that we're monitoring, we have that. And then, of course, everyone knows Power BI. But we now have this new piece in the middle here called databases. And we're going to talk about those as we go forward. And the first one we're going to talk about is SQL Database in Microsoft Fabric. Talk about what it is, why we have it, and so on. Now, all of this is on top of AI. That means there's AI co-pilots and the ability to create AI in all of these platforms. And of course, we're using OneLake for the storage for most things, but not the relational databases. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. And then on top of that, we have Purview. And Purview is the data governance feature that we have so you can document your data and make sure it conforms to standards. So this is a little easier to understand. And most importantly, to understand this, the first thing you want to do is mention again the unified data platform now instead of the unified analytics platform. You've got a little broader spectrum that you can use for storage, processing, and presentation of data. Now, why did we do this? So first of all, what is this operational database we have in there? It's SQL Server. So it's technically Azure SQL Database serverless. And that's the offering we have that's just Azure SQL DB, but when you ask for it, you get it. Now we've sped it up a little bit. Normally there's a little bit of a lag or a pause before you actually can connect to a SQL serverless platform. But we actually keep that sped up a little bit so it's very quick for this to work. Now what that allows us to do is a bunch of things that we're going to see as we go. Why are we doing it? Actually, developers came to us and they said they care about certain things. Number one, they said we want things just to be simple. Just do it. I don't want to go through 50 million things or several screens to do stuff. I just want to get a database and start writing code. After the database is running, I don't want to have to manage and monitor. I don't understand all those things, and I don't want to understand all those things. And then finally, they said, I want one thing that I talk to, like Fabric. I want one billing model. I want one security model. I want one portal to be able to do this. Can you do that for us? And so we did. We actually stood up something called SQL Database in Fabric. And here's what it gives for us. These are the three things you should keep in mind as you're talking to your customers. Number one, we worked very hard to make it simple. Wherever we can, we have simplified things. Secondly, we've tried to make it autonomous, not automatic. Automatic is a little dangerous in a database, but wherever it's safe to do things, we want to make sure things are done for you just sort of automatically. And then finally, we want to integrate it into the rest of Fabric. These were the pieces we cared about. It is just SQL Server. So it's still running in Azure. It is Azure SQL DB. It's not a different version. It's not a different style. It's SQL DB serverless. So that's the addition that it's running so that things can be simple, autonomous, and integrated. But some of the features are going to be inside of Fabric OneLake. The SQL database itself is still in Azure, as it's always been. But there are certain features that will write down to OneLake, and we're going to take a look at those. So let's start with our three messages. Whenever you're talking to customers, you can either talk to them by showing them a picture like this one, or you can go in and do some things in the product, which is what we're going to do today. And the first thing we want to tell people is it is simple, quick, and efficient. So let's do this. Let me jump over to the screen here. All right. If you would like to make a new database, assuming that this is a feature that needs to be turned on, and if it's been turned on by your administrator, you simply click New Item. You can simply type SQL in the search bar here, and there's SQL Database right here. To start a new database, you can give it a name. I don't know. Let's grab one of these, testing pathway. We won't put a space in it. That's a bad idea, right? And then you simply click Create. That's it. Just literally, I want one, give it a name, go. You don't have to set up firewalls. You don't have to set up anything else because you're inside of Fabric. You already have those security boundaries for you set up and made. Takes about 15, 30 seconds to do. So I'm not going to let you watch that for a moment just to save some time. I've got some here I've made. I created one here you can see called B Woody Supply Chain DB. And so I have created that database. And you'll notice it's created a couple of other things automatically. I didn't have to do that. But let's jump in there real quick. I'm just going to pop over, and when I click on the database name itself, you come up into the editor panel right away. So the database will load up, and then it's a standard editor. And for some reason, my system is slowing a little bit here today. The electrons are probably cold because it's cold in Florida, which is unusual for us lately. But the database itself shows up, and you'll notice there's various things right at the top. If you'd like to set up replication, there's a button. If you'd like to change some security, there's a button. If you want to go get data from pipelines or data flows, they're right there, and we walk you through that as simple as possible, even including, I'll expand the database here. I've got some data in this one. Here's a table. Let's go click on the products table. And when I click on the products table now, I still have the ability to get a query if I want one, but simply by clicking on it, I see the data. And this looks a lot like Power BI. And so developers are very comfortable with this sort of environment. So it's just very simple to set up and do. There's just not a lot I have to focus on here. And we're going to come back to this button right here because it's also simple to write programs in it. And speaking of writing programs, this is a live demo, so let's do this. Show me the top selling items per month. Let's do that. And that was a comment, so I guess that's not going to do much. When I hit enter, what will happen is, and I hit run, there we go. You can see the Copilot that's built right in has tried to figure out what's going on. Now it's got some notes here about this. I'm going to run it. It may have an error. It did have an error, so I can actually click fix query errors. And so it will go and try to rewrite the code and so on. It's also got an explain query button, so it'll actually put some little notes in here for what it's doing here. And so we'll try and run it. I'm not going to bore you with trying to fix this over and over, but you can go back and forth with this. So it's very quick for someone to write a query. Then when they're done, they can simply click a button to save the query as a view and so on. So I've got a few in here I've already done. This one, I should have typed a different question, but the general idea there is it's very simple for you to start writing code quickly. So that's the simple part of what we were talking about. And the next part we want to talk about is the fact that it is autonomous, or as autonomous as we can be. Let's jump back over to our screen here, and let's talk about some of this. The first one is I try to do things for you as much as I can, being Microsoft, to make this easy. For instance, backups. You have to have a backup strategy and a restore strategy and all those kinds of things. Well, in fact, we've got some restore points. We're taking backups for you all of the time. And as we take those backups, we're making restore points. Let me pop over here, and I can show you that if I wanted to restore one of those, let me scroll down here and say restore database. It comes up with those exact restore points we had. I give it a new name, let's say test or whatever. And then I can tell it, I want you to go to this date and restore, and it'll create that database. So you don't have to worry about taking backups or anything else. In fact, we don't call them backups. We call them restore points because we don't care about backing up data. We care about restoring data that's been backed up. So we're doing those for you all the time, and you can find more information about how quickly that's done and so on in the documentation, which I'm going to show you at the end. And I'm also going to give you some resources so you can go learn. There's a couple of great tutorials and things like that. The next part of autonomous that we do for you is there's some performance things. Now, these are interesting. You're going to get your CPU and connections and requests and so on. A lot of developers don't care about these sorts of things. What they really want to know, we've got a little dashboard here for you. And what they really want to know is what took so long. So they can go find the queries that were taking a long time, click on that query, and when they're done, they can actually copy the query into the Copilot and then tell the Copilot, can you make this faster? Just copy that query and open the editor, and right in the Copilot, you can say, help me tune this query to be faster. And it'll give you some suggestions for what you could change to make it faster. Again, we're trying to do this for you sort of automatically. So the other thing that's interesting to note is that when I come into my performance dashboards, you can see there's all kinds of information I have here, but you'll notice an interesting button here called automatic indexing. Now, I don't have big enough data set in here to even warrant an index. However, it will automatically add and remove indexes as it watches the system. So it will watch the system and say, people are querying a lot over this particular column, so I will add an index to that, and then later we'll watch it and say, okay, well, nobody's using it after all, so I'll take it off. And this is happening all the time to help tune your system to make it faster. So that's pretty helpful to do this in an autonomous way. But that's not the only thing that's autonomous. Let's go back to our database editor. One of the things we can do, we're going to come back and talk about this at the developer section here, is you can get a new API. Now, GraphQL is an API language to talk to data. So you don't have to learn Transact SQL or Spark or any of those things. You can merely point the GraphQL at the different columns to do things. The difference is, though, normally when you create a GraphQL server, you have to know how to write the Transact SQL so that the GraphQL API can make it easy on the developers. We do that for you. So you simply click, I want a new API. I'll click that button here, and then you give it a name and you click enter, and that's it. You've got a server and it now serves data. And I'll show you that in more detail here in just a minute. But things are so much more automated as much as we can. Now, there's another point of automation that is also part of our next feature. So I'm going to hold off on this one and show you to this slide that it's integrated and unified together with Fabric. Now, I mentioned a moment ago, let's go back to our screen here. I mentioned a moment ago that when I made the database, when I created the database, automatically or autonomously, it created some more items. And there are two that are kind of interesting. One of them is a SQL Analytics endpoint. And you can think of this basically as data warehouse. It's exactly the same thing, uses the same engine as the Fabric data warehouse. It makes a copy of the data down to this OneLake storage that now data warehouse queries can hit and your reporting systems can hit. Reporting systems usually use something called a semantic model, which is just an abstraction, if you will, over that data. Well, let's go take a look at this. I can simply click on it, or right inside the editor, you can move from the database to the SQL Analytics endpoint. Now, what it's done is it has mirrored. It's using mirroring to copy the data down. Now, interestingly enough, that mirrored data that's laying down there is sort of free. In other words, you're not charged the same way as you are against the database. So the developer can quickly make a database, and then they can point people at a different connection string. You can see that one is here. SQL endpoint, they get a different connection string here for their reporting system. And now they're not hitting the live data, but they are hitting data that's being updated every few seconds. The data is being mirrored down. It's a read-only copy. But you do have a full environment here where you can see exactly the same tables where we clicked on product, I think, last time. So this is not hitting the database. This is actually hitting the SQL endpoint or the Parquet and Delta files that are down here. Now, it gets even better with this because I can quickly come up here and say reporting right here, and I can make a new report, and I've done that. And I'm not a Power BI person. I'm a data scientist, so I work more with Python and notebooks and so on. But Power BI is very powerful. So what we've done is when you create a new report, you can simply click the Copilot button and say, make me a good report out of the data that I'm looking at. And it did that. I tried it here. I call it, it's probably a bad name. I call it a fancy report. This is literally what AI did. I did not make this report. And it did all of everything you're about to see. It came up with some suggestions. Would you like to see sales data, or would you like to see product data, or what do you want to look at? And I think I told it I wanted to see sales figures or something. And when I did that, it automatically created this report. And I didn't make any of this. I wish I was this good to make these sort of things. These are orders and shipping things that happened. The average unit prices. It's not too bad. And I can share that, or I can save it, or I can export it to something else. It was really nice that the Copilot button, you just tell it what you'd like it to do, and it will do that. It's pretty impressive the way that sort of works. All right, so that's my fancy report. But as I mentioned, I'm more of a notebook kind of guy. So let me go over here. I made a notebook as well for my sales analysis. And so again, this is coming from the Polaris engine, the data warehouse engine. So let me sign into that real quick. I'm sorry, I should have had that up already. Save us a little bit of time watching the screen here. But this is the notebook I made that's basically just the sales order. So by the way, I created this query using the Copilot in the editor to begin with. I said, hey, here's what I'd like to do, and it did that for me. So I ran that. Once again, this is against the Delta files that are down in OneLake. And now I get my typical table view, but I also get some interesting things. Our notebook editor in here does some things around missing values, data quality issues, and so on. And you can even quickly make a chart if you wish, a simplified chart. But you can also use Seaborn or ggplot or other tools to make even better reports than this one. But this one quickly lets me see the information in the notebook that I have. All right, well, there's more. So we've seen that it's simple. We've seen that it's autonomous, and we've seen that it's worked into the system itself so that it's integrated with the rest of Fabric. But it's aimed pretty much, this is where we're going to start talking about some of our use cases. It's aimed pretty much at our developers. And so the developers care about a few things. Number one, those three pieces: simple, autonomous, and integrated, but they also want things like source code control. They want to be able to set up views of how the product is flowing. And then they also want to be able to quickly set up an API. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We'll do that live here. Let's go back to our main screen here. So here's the database and then the pieces that it made automatically. There's my fancy report and so on. You can see I've got these flows that here, so I can actually show in this particular one what the application is going to do and what's going to read from what. You've seen the Power BI report and the T-SQL notebook. I haven't shown you the data flows, but they work just fine. I showed you where you can click to make a new data flow. I go get some web data and fill that up. And I also have a web application. So I'm now to the point where I'd like to do that. But before I do that, I want to make sure everything is under source control. So I'm not going to spend the time going through that today, but it's a single button. And you'll either go into Azure DevOps or GitHub. You can use either. I set mine up in Azure DevOps. And then what I do is I've got my epics and stories, and I've got all my typical things that I'm going to do for my development paths. And I've set up, I told it, I want to make sure all of these objects are under source code control. And so all I did was click a button and say, put it under source code control. And it did. And then every time I make a change on the GitHub or the Azure Data DevOps, it will automatically say, hey, you've got some things here that are out of compliance, that are not committed. Again, I'm not going to let this spend too much, but you can see I've got a couple of things here. I could commit those, and it would true up the Azure DevOps and the database if I want it to do that. I can also go the other way. I can make some changes in the database, and it will make sure that it lets me know that these things have not been committed into Azure DevOps, and it will write that back so it can go backwards and forwards. So you have full CI/CD for our developer. But I also mentioned, let's go back here to our palette and let me go back to the database. Inside the database, I have this new API for GraphQL. And again, GraphQL is just an API. A developer would stand up a program, Python, Node, C#, whatever it happens to be. They load the libraries to work with GraphQL, and they say, go get that data. And they do that with a JSON file is what they do. And then once the security has passed and they've logged in, it then comes back with the data, but they don't have to know where it is. They don't have to care about T-SQL or Spark or any of that because they just go to the API. So I've done that. I made one. Here's one. This is my supply chain one. And in this one, what I'm trying to find out is I want to know all of the regions where my products are sourced. So let's say, for instance, I've got I'm a manufacturer and I've got some things I'm going to build, and I want to make sure that the information, or rather the products I need, I have the materials to build them. So I buy products, right? I buy things to make other things. And let's say I have an outage in region 7, something like that. And if I get an outage in region 7, I want to know the other things we get from region 7. Let's say there's an earthquake or a storm or something, there's a shortage of aluminum, something like that. And I want to know, hey, who else is going to be impacted by this? I want to write a query. So you can see I've just gone after, this is how the JSON looks. Here's the query. Query the V products and descriptions, get me the items called name. That's all I'm doing. Now, the interesting part about this, though, is when I said, make me that API, the system actually stood up for me, the server for GraphQL that can go get all those things. You can see I've got various queries here that it's made. There's the one we're pulling from. And whenever you make a change in GraphQL, that's called a mutation. That's like an insert, update, or delete inside T-SQL. It wrote those for me as well. So if I go to create a new address, it knows how to do that. So we simply run this, and it's just going to go out to the server. The server is going to talk to the database, and the database is going to come back with a list of our items, which is what we asked for. And that's interesting. There's all kinds of things you can do inside GraphQL, but this is what's really interesting. You can simply click the generate code button here, and this code, if you copy it and paste it onto your hard drive, and you have Python, and you're allowed to log in, this code will run as it is. We wrote the code for you. We also do that, by the way, for Node.js. If you'd rather use JavaScript to do this with Node, we write the code for you so you can just drop it right down on the hard drive. So you can see how we've really tried to reinforce this idea that things are, they're simple, they're autonomous, they're integrated, and that we've aimed all this at the developer who wants to write something new. So we're going to lead up. We're almost to the point here where we're going to turn it over to Prashant to talk a little bit more about the customer stuff. But you want to aim this towards people who are doing new work or are already in Fabric and need a relational database inside Fabric. We don't intend for you to take an on-premises SQL server with thousands of SSIS packages and upload it into here. This is just SQL Server serverless. So you can already do this today over in Azure. The difference here is that integration piece, the simplified piece, the tooling we've put around it to make it easy for developers. I'm going to go one more screen here. And again, they'll give you this this PowerPoint deck. But if you would like to take a screenshot of this so you can see the links here, I've got a whole bunch of links for you. One of the best videos, even better than what I've showed you, not nearly as good as these folks. Down on the bottom, there's one called the Mechanics video. And my friend Anna Hoffman, who actually owns the product, and my other friend Jeremy go over a really interesting application of using this. So hopefully you've gotten your screenshot now. So I'm going to advance one more slide to use cases. And Prashant, if you want to steal the screen from me, I'll let you take over and I'll let you present.
Okay, so let's discuss the use cases and positioning. And I think, first of all, big thank you to all of our partners I think most of you are kind of, enable these options since it's in public preview, and you already started a lot of kind of evaluation within your customer engagement as well as your kind of within your internal environment to refactoring your accelerators and everything. And I'm like, we are getting a lot of feedback, so it's super exciting time. So let's talk about like the positioning and the use case aspect, right? That's where we want to spend more time. And we are really kind of, happy to have your feedback since you are more close to your customers, right? So as soon as you run into any kind of specific challenges or feedback, please reach out immediately, right? So right now, the SQL database in Fabric, it's in public preview, right? So let's look at the journey like from public preview all the way like until it becomes GA, right? What are the decision criteria or what's the positioning kind of a thing, right? Based on all the early risers, like all the partners who have been doing a lot of POCs, right? We got a lot of questions. So let's start with the key consideration first, right? So we got a lot of questions around the geo replication or kind of a replicated backup, right? So on the left side, you see all these different kind of features. They are in roadmap, right? The customer managed keys and kind of change event streaming, right? Specific to this private links, I will just a little bit pause here. So think about this like when you discuss this with your customers, we really want to focus on the quick wins rather than just directly, as Buck mentioned, we just don't want to target the migration day one, like from, for example, on-prem to any other kind of in the cloud, or like let's say you are trying to replace something in whatever setup you have in production, right? And as soon as you try to replace something in the production workload, you may run into some network security or other areas, for example, private link, right? Good news, yeah, I think it's coming like tenant level private link. It's coming in few weeks, like in public preview, right? But the idea here is we don't want to like just plan the migration like day one. I will talk about the quick wins, like what's the area you should focus. The other thing is sometimes every use case, every situation is totally different, and we totally get it, right? Like if customer is really looking for more customizations, right, and they want to control all the settings like from an optimization standpoint, yeah, Azure SQL DB could be right fit for that, right? We have very detailed kind of a list of parameters and decision guide in the SQL DB and Fabric documentation. So you can check like how the Azure SQL DB and Fabric SQL DB, what are the features and everything. They really put together a nice kind of a decision guide there. I'm just talking about few high level pointers so you get the idea on the positioning aspect. The other one is like, let's say you really want to use Elastic Pool, right, in your use cases, then yeah, Azure SQL DB could be your best fit, right? So there are few areas, maybe Azure SQL DB is your best friend, right? Like for example, those are the pointers, right? The other thing is you also think about from enterprise scale customers, right? You may need higher retention, right? Or you need more kind of a granular controls in auditings. So these are all the features kind of coming right down the road, right? And now let's talk about the quick wins, right? So this is, I highly recommend like you focus on the right side, right? Where as Buck mentioned about few areas, but one thing I really want to share based on my recent implementation experience, whenever you discuss this relational database or database positioning, right? Think about the operating model first, right? Like whether it's a co-managed or fully managed autonomous. Co-managed meaning like a lot of customers, they really want to control, right? And do all the things themselves, like managing databases and system side, app side, and DB side, whatever, right? So just you need to little bit kind of evaluate like, hey, what's the customer kind of pulse there? Like, is it more like a co-managed side or fully autonomous side? Based on my experience, even though the customer, they were doing more like a co-managed, slowly they are transitioning into fully managed autonomous. So at least they are welcoming like, hey, we really want to do some POCs on the fully managed autonomous databases. And I have seen across like all the cloud vendors and across all the kind of industry, right? Most of the time they are now open, like, hey, let's do a quick pilot or POC on the fully autonomous, right? So that heavy lifting part, they don't need to worry about, right? So The other thing is you can really target the areas where they are not looking for kind of that granular control, right? And just kind of focus on their application kind of a workload, right? The other thing is most of the organizations having the different tier of application, like, based on their application criticality as well as the data volume, right? So you can just understand their the different tiering architecture, and based on that, you can map like, hey, what are the databases based on the data volume? And right now, I think SQL DB in Fabric really best choice in terms of the data volume. I think it can go all the way up to the 4 terabyte of scale, right? And I would really kind of focus on the net new workloads, right? Whether it's kind of your AI applications, because right now I'm thrilled to share that like Fabric is part of the AI design win, right? So I think most of partners driving the lot of AI design win use cases, right? And on the data category, I think earlier we had different platforms, but I think Fabric is part of that. So that's really good news. And SQL DB in Fabric, like you can use it for your reg and vector and other kind of things. I have more details on the AI specific area in the slides, and we're going to share this slide with you, right? So the goal is to plan the net new workloads. Now, let me pause here and I'll share a couple of recent experiences. One thing is, if the data volume is very less, right, and the analytical, the queries or the workload they are doing, it's not really the analytical workload, right? And sometimes they just start fitting into some kind of a warehouse and run into a lot of performance issues. Recently, I have experienced like a lot of workload. Just you are just doing the SQL database kind of as your data source, bringing into one lake and then doing all of that kind of a reporting or kind of a querying on top of it. So what you should do is like just understand the data volume and other parameters, right? And don't just straight away jump into the warehouses and those areas, right? You should think about the data volume if it's really a natural fit for a transactional workload, right? And if the nature of that workload is not analytics, then SQL DB can be a really good fit there, right? Because I have seen a lot of customers just straight away jump into the warehouse and just doing like non-analytical queries, and then they run into a lot of performance issues, right? And the idea here is, as soon as we call it like we combine the transactional and analytical, the new term, right? Like translytical, you heard in the Ignite. The goal is, as soon as you start using the SQL database, it's automatically getting replicated to kind of a one lake, right? So you can mix and match between like SQL database and other Fabric workloads, like a cross querying as needed, right? The other area is like the multi-model. So based on all the different kind of data types or requirements, like it supports all the relational vector, graph, and all the other areas. I think GraphQL, you just see the demo from the park, right? Now, performance tuning, like a lot of customers right now, kind of, at least specifically, I have seen DevOps team, right, or DevOps or SRE team. They are really focusing on like, if we can, have some database where we don't need to worry about all of these kind of a heavy lifting, then they are just kind of piloting right now the SQL database in Fabric, right? And one of the other thing I really want to mention, which is not a very kind of a technical thing, but most of the our partners, they have all the different practices. For example, data analytics and AI. Now, all these practices are operating, and then they have their own priorities. Totally, we understand, right? But how can we kind of foster the collaboration between them? So I think when AI team is building all these different LLM applications or focusing on AI workloads, we just want to kind of really make that awareness like, hey, SQL DB can help from a reg, vector, and other aspects, right? So if all of these practices are collaborating and then talking to each other regarding all the use cases, at that point, your positioning becomes much easier and you will not lose the opportunities, right? Otherwise, kind of your spectrum could be very kind of lower. So that's what I was trying to kind of convey in this particular thing, like active collaborations really needed between all the practices, right? And there are a lot of use cases where most of the customers, they have enterprise architecture review board. and they have certain guidelines like, hey, these are the 3 things that's what we want to kind of avoid. And I think one of them is the complex ATL processes. I think most of the customers, they are thinking like, hey, we want to go with the SaaS platform and we want to avoid as much as data copy or ATL kind of a complex ATL processes. So that's the another natural kind of a fit for SQL database, right? And the other thing I really want to highlight about the standalone versus the unified data platform. There are a lot of workloads where they just need the database, and that workload is not kind of from the end-to-end analytical kind of a unified platform, right? So you should just think about like, hey, what are the use cases where they are just thinking about like a high level, just a transactional database, but not the end-to-end kind of analytics ecosystem platform, right? So that's where I think the standalone versus a kind of unified data platform, right? Now within the Fabric SQL database in Fabric, there is no like a different tiering in terms of like a pricing, right? So let's say if you allocate a particular F capacity, right, all the features are available within that Fabric F capacity. It's nothing like if you use F2 or F4, then you will get only certain features in SQL database. So there is nothing like a tiering or pricing. So those are the areas I really wanted to kind of dive deep, right? We do have a slide specific to on the like these are the all the different kind of questions we got from all the partners based on the early evaluations specific to kind of a V order optimizations and others. So we're going to share this slide with you, and you can go through with that. We do have specific information on the use cases as well. I'll just quickly highlight a couple of them, right? One of them is that kind of building the AI applications, like where we have a RAG and vector support. The other one is the metadata-driven ingestion framework. So most of the partners having kind of accelerators helping customers for their data ingestion and processing pipelines. And that's where they are using some sort of configs, right? Or some sort of kind of a metadata-driven ingestion framework to automate their end-to-end process. And that's where the SQL DB is a natural fit, right? Other than that, I think on the unified data culture side, right, we are seeing a lot of use cases around reverse ETL, meaning you already have a data in your data lake or kind of warehouses, but now you want to just get data out of that and do some further kind of a transactional level kind of a workload on top of that. So that's the reverse ETL, right? And other than that, yeah, I think I get a lot of questions specific to around like can I do the cross querying between the Fabric other workloads and how the direct lake works? Yes, so whenever it replicates the data into one lake, right, it's kind of, behind the scene, it's using all of that Delta Park and all the optimizations. So as soon as it writes into one lake, yeah, you can do the direct lake on top of it. So I'll pause here. Prashant, I don't know how am I doing on the time?
Yeah, I think we have about 12 minutes left. So I'm happy to highlight, how you can take advantage of, these use cases and, help your customers move forward. So we do have something called, Fabric Databases featured partner. I'll just take a couple of minutes to highlight that and how you can participate. Thank you so much, Prashant Attri and Buck Woody, for covering the topics of what is Fabric Databases. Hopefully this is exciting enough and you understand why Microsoft is investing in this space. It's a great opportunity for you to take this to the customers and position it. Again, if you see a customer already using Fabric today, okay, then it's a great target, right, for you to initiate the conversation, see if SQL database in Fabric is the right thing for some of the use cases the customer is already doing with Fabric, right? And the second target customers are, developers, right? Somebody working and starting a new AI application to be built, right? So instead of creating a database in Azure, you may as well create this SaaSified database within Fabric so that all the goodies that you've been hearing about, how simplistic it is, how autonomous it is, and how integrated it is with a larger analytical, platform makes a lot of sense, right, for such kind of customers. So what we're doing here is, as this is a newer technology, right? We want to make sure that we provide enough support, right, to our partners like you to take this to the market. So we're working with select set of analytical partners like yourselves, and giving you all the resources that you need to take this to your customers, pilot it, create the POCs, get it into the implementation stage, and also share the feedback, right, to us as in the product team, so that we can improve the product and make sure that the gaps are addressed, right? And we want to make sure that we are identifying and featuring such partners, right, through WinWires and LiveWire emails that are published to the Microsoft sales teams. And we want to identify you in the app source so that your logo shows up, and then you can be a proud, featured partner in the Fabric databases space as well, right? So if you can move to the next slide, I'll just share, some of the things that we are expecting, right? So if you have, you can take a screenshot of this, or copy the URL that's on the right side top, where you have, aka.ms, how to become FDFP, right? There's a simple form for you to fill. And once you fill the form, what you get is you get a dedicated partner solution architect from Microsoft that'll work with you on a bi-weekly basis, track the opportunities that you have or the POCs that you're implementing, look at the architecture, and advise on the best ways to progress with the customer, right? Do the account planning on a recurring basis, right? And provide all the support you need, like the pitch decks, the demos, right? Whatever you've seen today, Bug present, right? All the videos that we have and all the content that we're continuously creating, and make sure that your teams are enabled too, right? And get you priority access to all the training that we have. So you get all this bunch of stuff, right? And in return, what we expect is you identify one or two people that can work with the Microsoft team on an ongoing basis, and identify at least 4 to 5 qualified customers that you want to work with on, right? And share the updates to us as you progress. And we will track, how you're progressing, right from, meeting the account teams, Microsoft account teams, creating that page together, right? Creating those pilots and getting them into production. So you want to be along the journey, right? As you are making progress and be successful. And once you get the initial customer success, customer that's gone into production with Fabric SQL database, then we'll make you a featured partner, right? So what that means is, if you go to the next slide, there are many things that we do together, right? For a featured partner, we promote your logo in all the Microsoft events, including Ignite, Build, Fabric conferences. We'll ensure that we publishing WinWires and LiveWires to the Microsoft sellers. And for some of the qualified cases, we can create a public-facing case study along with the customer, the partner, and Microsoft's product we can highlight. And put your logo in the app store so that you are one of those very few partners that know how to work with Fabric databases and promote this further to our joint customers. Okay. So with that, I just want to wind up this segment as well. And if you go to the next slide, and open up for any Q&A. And we are really looking forward for the Fabric conference that is coming up end of March. And there's a great offer right now. So if you are working with customers or you want to register, you please use this code partner200. That will shave off $200 from the registration fees. And there's a ton of exciting sessions there, and a lot of execs coming to the session as well. So we'll be there in full force, right? We'd love to meet you all in person. So to take advantage of this opportunity and come to Fabric conference with 3 days of packed agenda for you. Okay, so with that, if you have any questions, again, we have a couple more minutes. Please raise your hand. I'd love to answer anything that may come to your mind.
So a couple of quick comments for everybody. Fabric conference in Las Vegas that Prashant mentioned, that is a great opportunity to get your wins and your GSI highlighted. Microsoft and the analytics organization, the Fabric team, are going to be promoting any successes that they know about. So if you have projects go lives on Fabric, if you have any wins on Fabric that you would like to promote, please, again, I'll say it again, work through your alliance manager, work through your data and AI manager. If you have a win at a particular customer, work with that account team. Let them know you have a win. Let them that you have a go live. They may not know. Okay, you may be doing this work, at your GSI, and the account team may not be very familiar with what you're doing. Let them know that there's a win. Let them know there's a go live. Let them know there's a conference in March, and it's an opportunity to highlight and promote that account, that customer, and your work. So, looking forward to having that collaboration with you. Before I close, Chris, question or a comment you'd like to make?
Oh, maybe it was in the documentation, but any quick starts or solution accelerators using would be amazing. So
yep.
If we can get those links, thank you.
It is in the thing. Hit the tutorial. I worked very hard to make that as simple as I could and as compelling. I wanted to make it real world. So it is in fact it's some of the sessions that you saw there. So it's the supply chain analytics, and it'll take you from not having a database or Fabric at all the way out to creating a full up C# web-based applications that you can deploy to Azure or just run locally. And it works just fine.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone. As soon as Buck sends me these slides, I will post them in the team room. I will not send out links. We have problems with links and security and download protocols, etc. I will post the slides on the team room. If you want to see the recording, you want to see the slides, switch your tenant, log into the team room, look for the channel, the analytics channel. The slides will be there as soon as I get them from Buck. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week.
Yep.
Thank you.
And
Thank
Prashant has those slides, so you should have.
Excellent.
I'll
Thank
share
you.
it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.